Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a very oft-delayed return from hiatus for the Antonius the Gamer Talk Show. I'm here once again with my friend Tim. We're here to discuss some topics with y'all today. Today's topics, we're going to talk about two things. We're going to talk about live service model games and then whether or not they work. And also, we're going to be talking about these next-gen consoles that are soon to be upon us. Exactly, and the price point. So, Tim, let's start off with the live service model games, and let's start off with the elephant in the room, or the poster child for those right now, Marvel's Avengers. Now that it's been about 2 weeks since the game released, how do you feel about that game?
I don't like it. I love Crystal Dynamics as a developer, and I was originally looking forward to the game when I heard they were the ones who were making it. But as I saw the game's development over a while, and then especially the term live service, especially after the current Battlefield and Battlefront franchise, I was not looking forward to it at all. And then especially during the first week when they released how they're going to handle the battle passes for future characters, basically like $10 a pop.
Mm.
You might as well just call live service the new microtransactions. Because when I think of live service, I feel like, all right, you're already going to give me, you're basically saying this game is nowhere near to be finished.
Mm-hmm.
Not going to be the refined polish that people are looking for. But so why am I paying $60 for something that's not finished?
Mm.
And I mean, I get it. Like, people are trying to get away from the whole season pass because, especially during the season pass era, it kind of felt like, well, we're going to get an unfinished game and then we're just going to sell you the rest for $30. But it just kind of feels like they keep adopting new methods that are just not working.
Mm.
I mean, but oddly enough, even with the season pass games eras, at least those games had better security about the DLC that they were releasing. Like, there was less bugs from the games that I played, for one, and they were on a better time schedule versus the live service ones. Sometimes things get delayed a week, 2 weeks, a month, or just get canceled out entirely because they took forever to do it.
Right. So that was one of my thoughts with Marvel's Avengers 2 around that time that was announced with the whole live service model. I wasn't necessarily against it, only because it seemed that the model in which they're going to handle the game in general, it kind of fit that model, right? So it's like, for me, it's like I would have preferred if they hadn't jumped straight from Spider-Man to an Avengers game. Like I would have preferred a standalone Iron Man game, a standalone Hulk game, or if you want to combine two heroes within the same game, like do one of those. But I'm like, nope, we're gonna do Avengers. We're gonna do 6 heroes, 5 heroes at once. It is what it is. So it's like, if you're gonna do it this way, and you want to add additional characters that might not make the initial roster, that makes sense to me. My issue with this game, though, and we kind of discussed this before we started recording, is again, like, are we getting enough to justify $60? Like, if I, as a consumer, don't want to delve into the live service model aspect of the game, if, like you said, for whatever reason, a lot of the plans that they had get canceled, they scrap it, they're not making the money they want to make, so they just stop. Am I getting enough for my $60 to justify this live service model? And so far, from what I've seen from Avengers, I don't think so. And I think it goes back to the overall conversation about live service models of, we're still not getting the amount of content in a base game to justify those future microtransactions, essentially, right? Where it's like, I might not be mad at parting with $10 for all the perks for Black Panther. Like, if I've had my run of the base game and all this content. But basically, like, especially in Marvel's Avengers or some of these other games we play, Battlefront, it's like you're getting like a starter pack, right? Like, here's the base things to cover just enough game, right? Just enough game to kind of justify that price point. And everything else, we're going to beat you over the head with costs. Everything. We're going to milk you for all your worth. And, I think you made a good point in terms of season passes. It's like, season passes don't seem to fully be working. It kind of depends on the game, right? Where it's like, to kind of go back to Spider-Man, I feel like the Spider-Man season pass made sense. I feel like we got enough content for the money.
Mm-hmm.
But straight up microtransactions don't make sense either, right? So like the live action business model seems to be the in between. But in your opinion, how would you ideally, if you have to play a live service model game, what do you think is a good neutral point for where the developers can still turn a dollar, because that's what it's about at the end of the day, and the consumers don't feel like they're being gypped?
Okay. Well, this is not a live service game, but this is a model that I'm going to choose. Look at Red Dead Redemption 2.
Mm-hmm.
Look how, like, I've heard so many people that they've been playing this game for months and haven't touched 50% of the completion yet, as
Mm-hmm.
in terms of open world story, the side missions, and all those other things, this and that and the third. But imagine, remember in Red Dead Redemption 1, like, remember how the DLC was spread out with that? And in terms of, all right, this is coming out 2 months later, this is our Halloween DLC, and this is our final closure DLC for that. It was doable. It was really doable because when I say that, the game was beefy enough to the point where you're not looking for the next thing that they're about to add. Like you're focused about what you have, what you just spent your $60 on, and you
Mm-hmm.
are settled with that. All right, but then let's just say probably like 2 to 3 months from now, okay, you pop into this. There's a new patch for the new update available. Now you're looking forward to something that's like, oh, okay, well, I already don't beat the story. I've been doing the side missions. All right, here's the new thing, the new feature that they will promise us. Let's check it out. Now, in terms of like these new live services, it kind of feels like certain of them, there's like, oh yeah, you bought the game today, but this will be available 2 weeks later. But then my thing is, so why couldn't you just wait for that particular type of add-on, like for Battlefield 5, for example,
Mm-hmm.
especially a game that's very heavily multiplayer focused. Why did you think launching a battle royale and a co-op mode 3 months later would be the best decision? I felt like that should have been a full game package from the beginning. Now, of course, like, yes, the latest Call of Duty, they launched their Warzone later down the line after the Modern Warfare release. But what I did realize how they were smarter with it is that Warzone is its own separate game.
Mm-hmm.
It is a separate game that you could purchase for free, like Apex Legends from the PSN store, or versus Battlefield's Firestorm was part of the original game. So that's where the two just did not make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because my thing is, if a game is a very heavily focused on multiplayer actions, I feel like you should have had the total amount of features that people are looking for. People are looking for co-op. People are looking for those battle royale type features. The basic just deathmatch domination and whatever you like to call it is the thing of the past. People want more integration. People want more cross-gen titles.
Mm-hmm.
People want this gaming community to feel more united. They want to say, all right, when I'm going in a room full of people, I expect to see people.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of like live services, I just kind of feels like this was the third strike. Like I said, Star Wars Battlefront 2, Battlefield 5, and then of course, Marvel's Avengers. I feel like this was really the third strike. So I feel like developers down the line really need to rethink this term live service.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think um, if it, like, let's just assume that this is not going away, right, and that this is the new middle ground for games going into the next gen and things like that. I think what needs to change is there needs to be a better balance of, like you said, like key features for a game versus things that I want to play, right? Because that's the song and dance essentially, right? It's like, as a developer, it's like you need some kind of incentive for people to want to part with more money, right? It can't just all be cosmetics, because you just might not buy it, right? Like it's not Street Fighter, like we're not, or Dead or Alive, where it's like you want to buy, the eighth costume pack that they have in the store. It's like some of these games don't have that kind of appeal, right? So you need something that's gonna incentivize people to want to part with their extra money, in that game. But I think, like, you're right. It's like it has to kind of be something where it's like it can't be something that should have obviously been in the game, right? Like it can't be something where it's like, I don't know, like, I guess for Marvel's Avengers, it's like you can't look at the feedback, for example, and say like, okay, we have these this feedback about how the stages feel empty and there's nothing more, and they all seem like copy and paste. So for a next update, for $15, you can get these maps that are tailored towards more specific characters. It's like, no, that should have been in the game.
Yeah.
Like that should have just been in the game.
Like, for example, like even on the battle pass, I saw like Doctor Strange. So you mean to tell me Doctor Strange is just going to be fighting a bunch of AIM robots rather than like demons?
Mm.
And then even like Black Panther, like what would the enemy, are we going to get Wakanda maps? Or it's just, I kind of feels like everything was like in the Utah or Oregon Badlands. Like everything just looked very dry. And then
Right.
you had one side New York, then the next is like LA. But like everything just felt very, very generic to me.
Right.
And like, yes, it was a lot of just beat 'em up, this and that. But then some of the stages, I was like, bro, this is kind of unrealistic. So you mean that tell me this tiny robot could pimp slap Hulk and he just fly across the stage? But then Black Widow could just take this robot down with such ease.
I mean, I think like so that's also one thing where it's like I didn't want to get too much into picking that game apart, only because that's not the specific topic. But that is something that like we've discussed plenty of times off camera about why Marvel's Avengers kind of doesn't work as well as they like to think in terms of playing to each character's strengths. Because like you said, it's like this is a game when you play it that like is very obviously suited more for Kamala Khan, Captain America, and Black Widow by far. And it's like you made too much of an effort to balance Hulk. You didn't put enough effort in the flight controls for Iron Man and Thor to really be useful, because you wanted to make a game where all of them could play, but the gameplay only suits some of them, And I mean, to me, it's like, I think, just to touch on this topic since it was brought up, I think what I would like to see if I was a person who purchased the game is like, let's roll in some new enemy types, like you said, or let's roll in something that, I don't know if that's something that needs to be behind a paywall, but it's like we need to put in some kind of things that makes these characters more appealing, right? Or it's like maybe you introduce a free update patch, right? That like buffs Hulk, but then you offer some type of, I don't know, like some type of paid system that justifies that new buff that you added, right? Where it's like you want these new stages that kind of like play off the strengths of the things that we've just added to Hulk for free. Here are these stages that you can pay for if you want, to really take advantage of that. But if you don't want to, you can still get these free buffs and still enjoy him on these interior maps, but it still kind of caters to the character. Because I guess we also have to also kind of be considerate of, this is development time. They're not doing these patches and updates don't come for free. Somebody's getting paid to do them. So, I think that's also something that has to kind of be kept in mind, especially when we're talking about live service games, is like, at what point do you justify the cost point? Like, is a free update that comes with a paid option down the road a good crossroads, would you say?
It's hit or miss. I feel like it depends on what the content actually is.
Mm-hmm.
All right, because look for the towards the end cycle of Battlefront 2, for example.
Right.
Like, look how much the base game was missing staple planets, staple for like the different arcs. Everything was heavily focused about the original trilogy, and plus they already messed up because they were releasing the game around the second movie, the last Jedi.
Right.
And the biggest thing was, start the game and we have a new crate coming the next week after the game. And I kind of felt like that's what was the nail in the coffin for that. Because when I first played it, I enjoyed the story. The story was and I'm glad it had a story mode versus than in the last game.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like so many things were missing. And like they even cut content that was in the season pass for the first game.
Mm.
And I was like, so you mean to tell me Bespin is gone again? Certain places for like Jabba the Hutt are gone again. You basically saying you only gave me a game worth that's Yavin, Hoth, Endor, a couple of planets for the sequel trilogy, but then the Clone Wars basically just only has Kamino and Naboo, and then it's like, so where's Coruscant? Where's what's the name of that other planet? Oh, Geonosis. Felucia, like where are all these planets that made the PS2 version the ultimate Battlefront game? And then even in terms of the heroes, I was like, bro, Star Wars Battlefront 2 on PlayStation 2 had so many heroes.
Mm.
It had so many different variations of the soldiers that you could use. But then you mean to tell me in this next gen era, that's something that was not in the base game? And I kind of felt like, they had to do a lot of damage control, especially after they moved away from the whole microtransaction system. And then look how long it took them.
Right.
They had add back content from Rogue One, and then they basically said, "Oh, well, we're sorry now, so this is the last piece you're getting, and we're just cutting all development and moving on to something else."
Right. They basically
But
had to apologize for a year with
for a
like
year,
free content.
for a year, and then you mean to tell me Grievous and Obi-Wan Kenobi is the biggest content pieces you have, and you mean to tell me those are key characters, bro? Key characters, like, yeah, it was cool to have Yoda, it was cool to have Moth, Boba Fett, but it's like, bro, that's bare minimum.
Mm.
But when it comes to this era, it kind of feels like live service just means bare minimum,
Right.
and I feel like that's not right. Because $60 is a lot right now, bro.
Right.
And there's some indie games charging like $20 to $40 that are coming with way more content than these big AAA titles.
Mm.
So it's a very weird way to find a balance. It really is.
I think that's actually a good segue to our second topic, which is, next gen consoles and things like that. And especially with not only the next gen console price points, but the rumored price points for games, right? Mm-hmm. That right now, the rumor is that maybe not across the board, but definitely for some games, a new price point is going to be $70 for a game out, like out the gate. So, Microsoft kind of officially revealed their price points for both versions of the new Xbox. And it's assumed that Sony will have similar pricings because they would be charge more for a game that has inferior specs. But it's Sony, so we don't know. Sony can be very bullheaded when it comes to what they think they're worth on the market. So my first question is, do you feel that a $300 price point and a $500 price point is acceptable for a next-gen console in the midst of a recession, in the midst of this coronavirus epidemic that we're going through, where people are poorer than ever? Do you think that that's a good middle ground for this next-gen upgrade?
Well, as a man that's done payday loans from time to time, I feel like that's what direction most people are going to do, just to cover the system. Just pay it back, in their next paycheck without really dipping into their own money, or just take the cut when they have to pay it back. But well, first off, when they were announcing these new systems, man, the whole pandemic thing hit everybody sideways. It really did. So like it turned off a lot of things in terms of production, but they can't rely they can't push out a product. They can't afford to push back a product. They cannot afford to. Mm-hmm. Especially after all these, online events everybody's been doing, in terms of like, showcasing what they have. They cannot afford to release not anything. Yes, I do believe the $29.99 one is actually a pretty good, decent price. I've heard that the specs is not the best because it's basically just one step above, the Xbox One. I heard. But I do feel like a lot of people are just going to go with that model just because it's more cost efficient. But then what also people got to really realize is there's not going to be that much games for the next consoles that are not going to be crossover titles.
Right.
Especially on your Xbox side, since you have no exclusive the first year, versus Sony. Because the Sony exclusives, those are going to be the signature, like these are only built on PS5 games. Because to be honest, I felt like Sony had like made that up in their mind that they were transferring over to the next system much faster than Microsoft has. Mm-hmm. Because when I really look at the titles that are releasing, a lot of them are cross-gen, and there's going to be like a free upgrade package for those, transferring over, like Hitman, Avengers, Call of Duty, of course. Mm-hmm. It's like how they did from PS3 to PS4, like, the shooters, some of the fighters, some of the adventure games, just to get people started.
Yeah.
So I don't think till like summer or fall of 2021, that's where we're going to start to see more. No, this is strictly for this system.
Right. So I think I would say from those price points and even the financing option that Microsoft is offering for both versions of the Xbox, where you can pay up to a year, a monthly fee, no interest, you get free access to their game package to that they have that offers old games. I would
Yes.
say out the gate, because we don't know what Sony is doing. We won't know until what is it, tomorrow, when they have their next event.
Yeah.
I think Microsoft, despite not having exclusives, is right now better prepared for the long game than Sony is, right? Where it's like you said, like I think Sony is looking to bank off of some of their exclusives, right? They're looking to bank off Horizon Zero Dawn 2. They're looking to bank off the Miles Morales version of Spider-Man, right? They're looking to kind of like push that hype into their new console purchases. Whereas like Xbox or Microsoft, like I feel like they kind of know, like, yo, they dropped the ball with exclusives. But even if you buy the $300 console, right, and you just kind of use their Game Pass for the next year, it's like that's going to carry you over, hopefully, until they can kind of get their exclusives rolling again, until they can really get this is why you need to buy a next gen console going. The thing, I guess, the question for me then would be like, is it a better approach with Sony, right, where it's like they're going to have all their exclusives like upfront, right, and hopefully like they're allowing the hype of those games to carry them through the bulk of 2021, or is it better that Microsoft is playing the long game and it's like, look, we don't have any exclusives, but you'll have all this access to previous content at a higher scale for almost a year?
I feel due to the current circumstances, I feel like both of them are they both made healthy decisions for themselves. Because when you think about Sony, you automatically think about original titles.
Right.
In the beginnings of Microsoft, like yes, they had their original titles, but it was mostly about there was more people using their multiplayer back in the day. And I understand during the PS4 era that shifted a lot because now PS4 is the multiplayer platform. Because looking in terms of Evo, like PlayStation's all over the place, and even like in terms of shooters now, like Fortnite, Call of Duty, those type of tournaments. So PlayStation has really taken over the multiplayer department that Xbox One had with an iron fist. But I do feel like they're both in a safe position because, to be honest, most of my friends who are getting a PS5, they said I'm not selling my PS4 right now because there's still so many things I got to catch up on, and there's so many things that I could actually play. They said they're basically saying they're going to have both systems for themselves. And, when the PS4 is on its last leg, that's the last leg, and that's when they'll get rid of it. So, I mean, I do feel like Sony, like they made the smart move of having some good signature titles to open up the holiday season. And of course, the beginning of next year. But then versus Microsoft on their Xbox platform, most of their players are probably just Call of Duty players, 2K. I mean, I hate to put that stigma out there, but then most of the time that's who I just see play those games. It's just that demographic. Like, they started off as Xbox and they stayed.
Right.
Plain simple.
Right.
Versus Sony, Sony, those are the friends that I have. Like, yo, did you play Last of Us yet? Did you play Ghost of Tsushima yet? Have you played the Uncharted titles versus the multiplayer experiences? Like, yo, what time are you getting online tonight?
Right.
So I feel like so I said I both feel that they're in a better place, but continue.
Okay. I guess the last question on this topic is, so I'm thinking, going back to the price point, both of the games and, the cost of the consoles themselves, what would you personally like to see game-wise that will justify paying $70, for a game? What is it that you feel needs to be the base content? Because, it's like anything else. It's like games used to be 40, then they were 50, now they're 60, now they're about to be 70. So it's like we're talking about almost $100 for a standard edition of a game at this point. Not counting the deluxe, not counting the collector's editions. Developers will argue it's the increase in development costs. It's the increase in the production cycle that games are more expensive to make, which is a fair point. But as a consumer, you know, what are you looking for to be like, okay, I'm about to drop $70 for this game?
That's a rough one, bro. For example, I'll look at these two PS5 exclusives. Okay, Ratchet and Clank. Um, I mean, Ratchet games are fairly long. I'll
Mm,
give them that. And then there's still a lot of post game content with them because I've never seen a Ratchet game with DLC.
true.
So, all right, I'll give that game $70.
Okay.
But the Miles Morales story, which is basically like an Uncharted Lost Legacy standalone DLC game, which is like a longer story,
Hmm.
no.
Right.
But then, so are you basically telling me those type of games are going to be $59.99 now? Because you cannot sell me that for $70, bro.
Right.
You cannot. And that is a very strong argument. I mean, down the line, bro, like it's gonna be rough because, like, don't tell me you selling me a game for $70 and you talking about the season pass at the same time.
And you know they will. Like, you know they will.
And I find that so crazy because, especially after Ubisoft just had their next event, they were talking about Watch Dogs Legion, and then they was talking about bringing the protagonist back for a story DLC. I'm like, bro, the game ain't even finished yet, and y'all talking about DLC chapters already. You got the trailer for it and all. So that means if you got the trailer for it and some like light in-scene gameplay, that means he's already playable. That means you just hide him behind a paywall. So that judgment point, bro, is gonna be very rough. I mean, you know, of course, ever since I met you, I've been very skeptical about which games I purchase now.
You know, I do what I can.
Price points now, bro. People are gonna be looking forward to them Sony deals every week, like a hawk.
To give my 2 cents, I completely agree with you. I think, you know, for somebody who might be watching this, unfortunately, they're not going to get too much of a class and opinion here. But I agree. I'm like, if I'm paying $70 for a game, I don't want to see NBA 2K22 with the same problems that 2K21 had, and you just put a brand new coat of paint on it. Like, I need something where it's like, this is a next gen experience. You know, I think one of the things that people overlook, especially I think like with the PS3 era, is like the PS3 era had a lot of really like risky brand new IPs that kind of got abandoned. Like, I always go back to like Heavenly Sword. You know, like Heavenly Sword was a game where I was like, yo, this feels like at that time a next gen experience compared to PS2. I'm like, I can't believe what I'm seeing. You know, and I feel like for me, it's like I need that kind of experience, and I don't mean visually. I mean like the way the game played, you know, the way the what they're able to do graphically, of course. You know, I still need a full-fledged game that also gives me an experience that I feel like I can't get anywhere else. But like you said, as much as I enjoyed Marvel Spider-Man, I am not paying $60 or $70 for Miles Morales, especially if you're telling me it's going to be a maybe 15-hour, if that long, side story that's basically like Spider-Man complete version while we wait for the official sequel. There's no way. Now Horizon Zero Dawn 2, maybe. You know, like the first game had a lot of content. You know, they did actually end up adding an expansion pack DLC that was also worth the money. You know, so I'm like, I think it might depend on the developer, but it really is going to depend on which developer is brave enough to kind of step out there and set the standard of here's what a $70 price point looks like, and here's what we can justify. Because, you know, if the first thing that EA announces is Battlefront 3 and we're getting, you know, the same issue of Battlefront 2, it's like, I'm not paying $70 for that. It's not going to happen.
And that's another thing, bro, because you made a good comment earlier. Like annual titles, like 2K, Madden, Call of Duty, those games that come out like year by year, like even Assassin's Creed now. I mean, they say they're not trying to get back into that, but whatever.
Right.
It's like, so me, like, you mean to tell me that a person has to really buy this ASAP and get a year's worth of gameplay in before you just release the next one? And like, what determines that $70 mark now? Mm-hmm. What new features are you going to bring that's going to make last year's title obsolete in a sense?
Right.
Because like, I still see people who they're playing Black Ops 3. There's some people who playing Infinite Warfare. There's people playing Modern Warfare. There's people playing World War II version. And now we got Black Ops coming up in a couple of months. So it's like you got people across like 5 different annual titles, bro. So it's like, what is going to be the difference of this next one that is going to make it so significant, especially in this new era?
Right, because it's not graphics, right? We already know it's like we're now in an era where it's like, at the end of the day, PC reigns supreme. None of your consoles are going to look as good as a PC. So you're not getting, like, the graphics is no longer the selling point. I would love, as controversial, I guess, as this can sound, is like, I would love if we kind of got back to the PS2 era of gaming, where it's like gameplay ran the market. Like, you think back a lot, at least when I think back of some of my favorite games on PS2, them graphics weren't the greatest on most of them. But that gameplay was just like, yo, it's just so much fun. I can't put it down. It looks ugly, but I can't put it down playing. And we already know, like, with the way graphics are now, it's like we're not going to have a slouch in graphics. We know that the standard for games now is like the graphics are going to look good. So could this be a return to the gameplay era of games? I think, in closing, I think that's the only way some of these companies are going to survive. You can't make it pretty anymore. It being pretty no longer
matters.
Yeah. How much prettier can it get? How much more photorealistic can a game get at this point?
Yeah, and when you said in terms of gameplay, like, Ratchet and Clank is a very good example, because I remember I told you about the last one, which was like a reboot. I was like, bro, it was just the gameplay alone that just kept me so involved. Like,
you were right, because I love that game.
even grinding out like some of the little side quests for these little upgrades, like, it was just fun to do. It was just really just fun to do, and that's a single player game. So like, I'm thinking more in terms of like 2 versus 2. So like in terms of like your Tekkens, your Soul Caliburs, your Dragon Ball Fighter Z, the gameplay is what's going to keep that alive. And
to some degree.
Go ahead.
To some degree, because I think now that you mentioned fighters, I think fighters also have to retool themselves a little bit, right? I think the PS4 era was more like the introduction of really good story, right? Where it's like, NetherRealm kind of kicked things off, for example, on PS3 with the Mortal Kombat reboot, and then other games kind of follow suit. And like, okay, a fighting game can still have a good story. That might not be the case for the PS5, Xbox Series X generation, but it's gonna have to be something. I don't think Fighters, for example, can do a Fighters 2 and still have the same lack of like offline content that they do with Fighters 1. It's not gonna work. It's not gonna work, because if there's someone like me who was like, I play those type of games casually, I don't care about the frame data of these new characters that are dropping. That doesn't mean anything to me. I just like Dragon Ball Z, and I want to do Dragon Ball Z related things with cool characters and cool, cool gameplay. So I think in closing, I think like every developer has to know what their new strengths are going to be. Capcom, for example, they have a lot of repurposing they need to do. Like, all of their franchises fails, they're way behind. They're being beat out in every department of games that they put out. They're already starting to wear out their welcome with the Resident Evil reboots. So, I think it has to be something that they change up their approach.
And then, to be honest, they only got room for one more reboot, and that's Code Veronica, because nobody wants to see another 4, bro. And then especially how Resident Evil Village looks. Like, bro, that's basically 4 with Chris Redfield in it, but of course much prettier.
Right.
So, so they're really wearing out their welcome in terms of reboots, man. And I do feel like it's also time for certain developers to revive certain series. There's a lot of untapped potential from the PS2 era that Sony just needs to like jump back on, bro. Microsoft and Sony did the right thing by making their own published studios. I'm sad that Xbox got one studio in particular, but I do feel like that was a very smart move to have more branded stuff on the names. So I just hope like these companies make the smarter moves, and then also the gaming world has more competition now. Stadia, Nintendo's starting to get some fire into them and say like, oh, we want to like increase ourselves as well. So
yeah, there's rumors that they're going to be dropping a 4K version of the Nintendo Switch this year, which is
I'll see
unheard of for Nintendo, because you know they don't care about graphics at all.
But it goes back to what you said. It's about gameplay. They value that over. I mean, it held them up for years. But then they're starting to fall behind. So
yeah,
we'll see what this generation brings, man. But it's not going to be for a while. So I feel like everybody's expectations should just be level.
Right. Very neutral. All right. Well, Tim, thank you for making time for the show today. To people who have been watching this show, I promise not to take as long as a break this time. You know, it's a pandemic. Life is rough. I'm sad. All right. So, Tim, if you want to drop your social media information so people can follow you.
Mm-hmm. You can follow me on Instagram at Michael Smith, MYKALE Smith.
All right, and that's his Twitter account as well. Actually, no, it's not your Twitter account.
No, I mean, I'll give you my information to put in the bio.
Okay, all right. It's 242 Uprising, right? Twitter? For Twitter? Okay, yes. And, you know, for me, all things gaming related, it's Antonius the Gamer on YouTube, on Instagram, on everything. So, you know, ANTONIUS DAGAMER. And thank you guys for tuning in and watching. And until next time, peace.
All right.